This is the Guns Magazine podcast, episode number 69. And we're recording.
So I'm recording the shit out of this.
He's in rare form today.
I'm making this recording my bitch.
You sure that maybe you have your finger over the delete key?
Hi there, and welcome to the Guns Magazine podcast. I'm your host and the editor of Guns Magazine, Brent Wheat. Thanks for joining us as we talk to the interesting people who make up the world of shooting, hunting, and the firearms industry. Before we get started, let's talk about our sponsor, Berger Bullets. Berger builds match-grade rifle bullets and ammunition for target, hunting, and tactical shooting applications. Proudly made in Mesa, Arizona, Berger uses the highest quality materials, tooling, and production processes to produce the world's most accurate bullets and ammunition. Proudly made in Mesa, Arizona, Berger uses the highest quality materials, tooling, and production processes to produce the world's most accurate bullets and ammunition. Berger's unequaled by the competition and has established more long-range world records than all other manufacturers combined. To find out why our nation's elite operators, competitive shooters, and hunters all trust Berger to shoot better, visit your favorite retailer to experience Berger's uncompromising quality or learn more at BergerBullets.com. Everybody's worried about losing their AR-type weapons, and we agree it would be a terrible, terrible blow to law-abiding citizens if such things come to pass. However, we're not going to talk about if it happens, but what to do if you suddenly find yourself unable to use your defensive black rifle. And if you happen to be a troglodyte like myself, we'll even revel in the fact that a few old cranky guys even choose to carry lever actions and other type of rifles for self-protection. Best of all, I call up a few old friends who've been absent for a while, and as usual, things come close to getting out of control. Now, here's the FMG Gun Cranks cussing and discussing AR alternatives. Well, today we're going to talk about black rifle substitutes, and I needed to talk to some folks with strong opinions, so I called up some buddies. And who would those buddies be?
I disagree.
But the gun cranks. I almost call it the bun cranks. Wow, it's been a while.
Bun cranks? That's kind of, that's appropriate maybe. I don't know, yeah. You know.
Well, guys, thanks for picking up the phone and talking to me on the Guns Magazine podcast, and we'll have a little fun talking about it today. Catch folks up. I know, Roy, you've been guarding the chicken house, and Tom's been on sabbatical in the Alps looking for a good cup of cocoa, so it's nice that you guys could take time out of your busy schedules to talk.
All I have to say is nobody told me it could get minus 25 in Joplin, Missouri, and I demand a refund.
That's awful. and I know Tom's in his beach house. How fair is that?
I don't even want to hear it.
Yeah. Secret beach bunker.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Well, and we were talking before we recorded, Tom's on his third super extra large double espresso. So he is wired for sound. So I got my finger on the delete button today.
Yeah, well, start pushing it. You know, that reminds me of those.
Start now and hold it for about 35 minutes.
When you go in an antique store around here, they have put these signs up. They say, if your unaccompanied children will be given 3 espressos and a free puppy. You know, that's who we have with us today.
Well, our topic of the morning, what we're talking about is the black rifle. And I think everybody feels like the shoe's going to drop. Our current administration is going to do something senseless and dumb to make them either illegal or too expensive to own. So there are some options and there are some substitutes. So let's go forward with the idea of, I don't want to see this happen. Let's just move forward and say, if it happens, and we got to look at some alternatives, let's talk about that. So I'm going to stand on my platform of the lever gun. Colonel Jeff Cooper, he came up with the Brooklyn assault rifle. He called it back in like the 70s or 80s. And talk about cowboy up. That was like the original assault rifle. So do you agree or disagree, Tom?
On the efficacy, how do you like that espresso word?
Exactly.
Of a lever action for an assault blank. So we should pause for a second just so the hate mail doesn't come. We are fully aware of the difference between assault rifle and assault weapon, folks. So We're going to throw those around kind of loosely today in fun, right?
The common nomenclature.
Assault rifles are real, full auto. Assault weapons are mythical, right?
Right.
So, okay. I don't know. It's cool. I think, anything that you cycle and operate by hand, it's got something going for it, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's positive action. You're not relying on fancy mechanics and gas operation and pressure and physics and thermodynamics and all that jazz. You crank the handle and it's ready to go boom again. I mean, there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, there's a reason why open-end wrenches are still in every toolbox.
Leave it to Roy.
But those are only assault wrenches, right?
That's right, yeah. I'm with you, Brent. I think it's a heck of an idea. And, we just posted that video of that cut-down Model 94 that I did.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think we can go back to the adage that some gun is better than none gun. And regardless of the reasons behind it, if you live in a place and you're not allowed to have semi-auto modern sporting rifles, don't let that mean you're not going to be armed to fix, to save your family.
Yep.
And so I think we have to toss out the political side right now. Let's talk about the practical side.
Well, I'll make my case for the lever rifle. First off, that is, I've said this before, it's my quote-unquote truck gun. I keep a rifle in my truck because sometimes the world gets unfriendly and you need something more than that pistol. And as we've said many times, a pistol is something you use to fight your way back to the rifle or shotgun you would have brought if you knew there was going to be a gunfight. So I carry an old Model 94, a mid-70s. It's not the greatest quality. It's got blacked-out furniture. But getting back to the reasons why, there are several. First of all, if you tell me the 30-30 is not an adequate round, I'll say you're an idiot, okay? We can argue the best round, this, that, or the other, but bottom line is, it is a very effective round, and there's countless deer, elk, bear, and two-legged varmints that would attest to that fact.
Serious question. Has the 30-30 assaulted more deer than any caliber in history? I would say probably
that's
yes.
Possible, yeah. I think the Model 94 at one time was the most popular rifle ever built in terms of numbers, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's over like about 6.5 or 7 million now.
Yeah.
Okay, I thought I'd heard that. That's, yeah. All right, sorry, Brent, go on ahead. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah. But you look at the ballistics, the 30-30 is basically double the 223. So at 150 yards, a federal 150 30-30, you're looking at like 1,100 foot-pounds, whereas with a 223, the federal 55 grain, you're looking at 700 and change, about 780. So, and again, I'm not arguing the merits of is the 223 better than the 30-30, but to those who say the 30-30 is not good enough for large animal defense or human defense, no, you're wrong. You're wrong. So, but really, there's several other reasons that I like it because, and frankly, this is the political side of it. It's John Wayne's cowboy gun. Mm-hmm. You get a black rifle out right now in certain quarters and people lose their freaking minds. You pull a lever action, they go, well, how quaint is that? I've seen that in the movies. Even though you can put a lot of lead downrange very effectively with that lever action. So I think that's good. I believe, I can't speak from empirical evidence, but I think 30-30 is probably easier to find right now instead of 223, and it's cheaper. I mean, all prices have gone up, ammo's in short supply, but I would venture to say if you go to the corner general store out in East Bumfree, you're probably going to find at least a pack of 150 grain 30-30. You probably ain't going to find any 223, just a guess. And then finally, and I would like to get you guys' opinion on this. I just came up with this. I think the lever is actually less attractive to thieves for this reason. I think most thieves who tend to be in that, 17 to 30 age range, the ones that know how to operate guns, they've probably seen it on Call of Duty, and they could probably do the manual of arms of an M4 carbine. But you throw a lever gun at them, they wouldn't even know where to begin with that thing. So I think it's less attractive to thieves. And in the end, if they do break into like my truck and take my rifle, I'm out $200 a Model 94 versus, I've got some pretty expensive M4s. I don't want to see those going to disadvantaged urban youth. So That's my soapbox. That's my point. Yes, I love the M4 carbine. I like the AR-10, et cetera, but my truck gun is an old Model 94 Winchester.
Well, I agree. As Rush Limbaugh, may he rest in peace, used to say, dittos to what you just said. I mean, and anyone who poo-poos a 30-30, think 150 grain bullet at 2,000 feet per second. And when I was a policeman, we did some vehicle penetration tests. And so I was there while the SWAT team was doing it down at the range. And like you, I always had a short 30-30 in my truck. And so they're shooting this with 9mm pistols. They had some old Cadillac or something. It was a Cadillac. And the bullets are bouncing off the sheet metal and not making it through the windshield. And they're shooting it with 223s and they're being all tactical and shit. So I went back to my truck and I got my 30-30 and I came up and I say, hey guys, do you mind? I'm a little curious to know what would happen here, which I knew exactly what would happen. And, so I fired 5 shots I had in the magazine, and it went completely through both doors, side to side. It went right through the windshield, right out the back window. And they all came over and said, what is that again?
It's an anachronism. It's
fires
old.
a bullet 3 times the weight of those puny little things you're shooting, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And it's just astounding. So I think the age group you were talking about, Brent, I had to laugh because I was envisioning some thief. And the thing for you to do would be to leave instructions on how it works on paper in longhand because they wouldn't know how to read it.
Exactly.
Well, I don't know. Caliber matters, though, because although I planned for the ammo shortage about 20 years ago by buying a Winchester 9410, which, as you might guess by the name, is built to fire 410 shot shells or slugs. I do feel well equipped if my home is assaulted by bunnies, but outside of that, I'm not sure that it quite stacks up to the 30-30 lever gun for an assault weapon. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I think that and remember, we're both proponents of the 30-30, but I think the key here is we're proponents of lever guns.
Yeah.
And I think if you're really serious, a 30-30 would do you well. But 44 Special, 45 Colt, 44 Magnum, 357 Magnum, even 38 Special, in a 357. All of these are really viable. No bad guy wants to get shot with anything. And you get those shorter cartridges, you get the 45 Colts and those kind of, heck, those 2 magazines hold like 10 rounds.
Yeah.
So what on earth and you could empty that in about maybe 2 or 3 seconds. I think you could empty that really fast if you want to.
And I think that raises a good point too, that everybody that, when we hear this a lot and we've argued it and tried to dispel it, but in a civilian situation, why do you need 90 rounds? I mean, yeah, I carry extra magazines too, but let's be serious. Gunfights tend to be short duration things. If you're assaulting a house in Mogadishu, yeah, carry all the ammo you can plus 1. Here, it's probably not going to be that. If I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 gunfights ever in my memory and collectively in the country where it went over about 10 or 15 rounds. The North Hollywood bank robbery, that there were a whole crap ton of rounds were fired. There's a few of those, but for the most part, and especially if you take it into the non-law enforcement realm, the non-military realm, your job is to solve the problem quickly and get out of there if need be. So if you can't solve the problem in 10 rounds, it's a hell of a problem.
Plus with these lever guns, I like them because I keep mine loaded with 5 rounds in the magazine because I've shortened it a little bit. And you can get those little sling cuffs that go on the buttstock, and you put 6 or 8 rounds in there. And then I also drill the bottom of the buttstock and put a leather strap on a snap, and I store 4 or 5 more shots there. So if you pick up the rifle and you've got 15 or more rounds in your hand. And like you say, boy, there's just no problems you can't solve. I keep one of those rifles near the front door and one near the back door with a sling, even with a pair of earplugs, in a little plastic container. But I can't tell you the number of times, it's like thump, something, what's going on outside? The dogs are barking. You walk over, you take the rifle, you go outside, and you can pretty much solve any problem that you would encounter if you've got a rifle like that in your hand.
Well, we've got a lot more data now on black rifle use for home defense, and there are a goodly number of cases involving multiple intruders, and one person with a black rifle. With all that said, I don't know of a single case that involved going to a second magazine.
Yeah.
So that's 28 to 30, depending on how you load. But I don't know of one that ever emptied a magazine, one against numerous.
Well, that's a case of a shoot all the ammo you have too, Yeah. And if you've got 5 or 6 rounds in your lever gun, I mean, remember we carried revolvers on duty, and an average police shooting was 2.6 rounds, I think it was. And once we went to autos, then an average police shooting was 8 rounds. And I think it's probably 35 now, and so I think you temper, your response with whatever your equipment is. We had an incident in Oklahoma near us here. It was 2 or 3 years ago, but a young fellow at home, and I think he killed 3 genuine home invasion burglars.
Wow.
And he had an AR-15. Mm-hmm. And like you say, though, I think he only used about 10 rounds total.
That's good shooting, Tex.
It was good shooting. That's a good thing he had that rifle,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
now we've talked levers, and again, let me throw in here, if you just joined us, as they do on radio, we're not saying you have to use a lever gun instead of your AR-15 or whatever. We're saying if you cannot get your hands, or political situations made it untenable, there's nothing wrong with being armed with a lever. Or Tom McHale is a big fan of bolt actions.
Yeah, but what's he know? Go ahead.
Well, I don't know. I wouldn't have. Yeah. I don't know if I would choose one. If I had both sitting by the nightstand, an AR platform and a bolt action, I'm going to choose the AR 103 out of 100 times, right? But but hey, don't, if you got an old bolt action sitting around, especially something more on the compact side, like a ranch rifle type design, or a scout rifle, heck, the world inflicted plenty of violence on itself using bolt actions only for quite a long time. So I don't know. I think maybe a little slower than a lever action, but with a little practice, not that much.
Well, Colonel Cooper was a huge proponent of the scout rifle concept, and Ruger and several others make scout rifles. Now, I got to say, I was doing a little research for today, and I got on one of the lesser-known firearms blogs, and this gentleman, I will use the term, was really poo-pooing the entire concept and Colonel Cooper. And I did a little checking to see where this gentleman was drawing his conclusions from, and he basically pulled them out of his rear end. So I thought, okay, that's a typical scenario we often laugh about, is a guy that's making these grand sweeping statements against somebody who at least had been there, done that. And unless this guy truly had that secret squirrel career, I didn't see anything in his background that would let me know he's ever even pointed a gun at another human in a real situation. So, take it for what it's worth. That's kind of our caveat every time we get together of, the popular press is, well, it's often worth what you pay for it.
Well, about 30 years ago, when I was a policeman, I bought a K98 Mauser rifle bolt gun. They were brought in by Sarco, one of those companies in Shotgun News, and it was in 308, and it is an Israeli import. They had got them and converted them to 308, and they weren't very much money. They were like $150. And so I got that because at the time there were no police rifles in our police cars, and we had Remington 870s. And it just seemed to me that it would be nice to have a rifle of some kind, because the world was just starting to go to crap in those days, So I took this gun and I shortened the barrel to 16 and a half inches, and I found the only fiberglass stock that anybody made in those days, and I put it on. I found some adjustable iron sights for the back and a protected front. I bent the bolt handle down, lightened up the work. I screwed one of those butt cuffs to the stock that held about 6 308s and put a sling on it. And then went out and proceeded to shoot, 2-inch groups at 100 yards with a 308. And I showed that on the police department. They all laughed at me and said, well, that's stupid. Why would you have a bolt action gun? You know? And so then I let them shoot it a little bit. And when little holes started appearing on bad guys' heads at the 50-yard line, you know, they started staring at each other saying, well, God, I don't know. Maybe this is a good idea. I don't know. I was never able to get it past the powers that be, but suffice to say, it lived in a short bag in the trunk of my police car for years. And it was nice that it was there. And it was interesting because there were guys who knew I had it. They would be doing something. They would come out on the air and say, would you have the unit with Officer Huntington respond to our location? And I would just show up and kind of stand around until they were done doing what they were doing.
With your hand in the trunk.
Hey, yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. See you later. But that's why I think that actually Tom is really right. And I don't think that I would feel unarmed at any level with a bolt rifle. And actually soon after that, call it 15 years ago, 20 years ago, the concept of a short bolt action police rifle was valid and became a real thing. And then those companies started doing the magazine conversions for Remington 700s. So you could put 10 and even 20 round magazines in your bolt action gun. So
heck, remember not so long ago, probably about around the turn of the millennium, give or take a couple of years, those little compact Mosines with bayonets attached were $80 to $90 all day long. You know, as many as you wanted to buy. So no, I guess those days are over, and ammo sure was plentiful. So you know there are a lot of those things floating around out there.
Well, we've talked about the advantages and the benefits of doing this, but let's talk about some of the problems. We've already touched on ammunition can be in short supply. And it's funny, Roy, yeah, I've done the same thing, except I didn't drill out my stock to put a couple extra rounds. I may have to do that. I like that idea. But a good fighting long gun certainly needs a sling. It needs a light. It needs optics. And those are probably the big disadvantages of using some of these other platforms is it's sometimes hard. So like Roy...
Not if you have duct tape.
Well, that's that's going to be our next cover gun, the duct tape special. So, sights on lever gun, Roy. What's your setup?
Irons, aperture rear if you have one too.
Yeah. One
of mine has an aperture. One of them is just a fixed or iron sights. And I don't have one of those fore ends that you can put a light on it or anything. I'm just real bare bones. And just because, when it happens fast, and it could be bouncing around in your truck, like you say, as you grab your rifle and you dash out the door, you crash against the door frame, and yeah. I want it to be as bare bones, rock solid as possible. And that's what I feel. But you need a sling because people forget that. Okay, so something happens and you need a place to put your rifle while you drag your friend who's wounded or put out the fire or hold the dog back or, move the kid behind you, and you need a place to put it. And so a sling is like a holster is for a pistol.
Hey, though, if you want to modernize a lever gun, what I did, I have a Marlin 3030 floating around, and I just upgraded the sights. I went to XS Sights and put a set of tritium ghost ring sights on there. It's fantastic.
Cool.
Super fast,
Perfect.
And lighter conditions. You've got a tritium glow dot up front, for darker conditions, and added some life to that rifle.
It's perfect. And I think, but the only challenge would be the manual of arms. I've grown up with a lever gun in my hand, and so everything's pretty automatic for me. And I was fortunate enough to spend a couple classes at Thunder Ranch where we actually ran the pre-1900 style guns and learned to fight with them. And Clint Smith, because he innovates everything he touches, came up with some just brilliant solutions as to how do you load lever guns, kind of speed load a lever gun. And but all of that takes some manipulation and practice. And so that would be I think the only downfall is that if, the secretude is if you shoot a couple shots, take the time, if you have it, to top up constantly. So you're always jamming one in the loading gate, whenever you think about it. Rather than wait till you're completely empty. And but there's fast ways to do that. As a matter of fact, now that we talk about that, I think I'll do a video on that. Is like, how do you, quote, speed load a lever gun? And I'll demonstrate a couple tips and tricks.
Well, that's one of the advantages, I think. A lever gun, you can, reload literally between shots without changing the ready condition of the rifle.
Yep.
That's it. You're exactly
bolt
right.
Guns, you have to kind of disable, for lack of a better word, for a second, as do magazine-fed guns if you want to top off, but not a lever gun.
Good point. And Roy, I wanted to circle back. I had a sudden thought when you were talking about mounting lights and all that. You know, we're like the last generation, and I'll even throw Tom in on this. You know, pistols used to come without lights. Did you know that?
I read
lights
about
are
that.
a recent invention on pistols. But now if you talk to especially younger shooters, they can't even imagine what that's like. And, you know, we use the Harry's technique and the FBI technique and all that. And a lot of I'll admit it, a lot of times you just stuck your flashlight out there and stuck your pistol out there. You tried to do all that cool tactical stuff, but sometimes the situation didn't allow it. But having flashlights around, and I would bet dollars to donuts, all of us have more flashlights stuck in various places in our homes than we even probably do guns.
I know we do. You're right. Well, you know, my bedside table gun has a light on it, of course, and there's also an 8 million lumen handheld light. And if something happens, both of them get picked up.
Yep.
And I use both of them. I'm kind of a Harry's, you know, kind of a guy. And primarily and this is where when cops first got lights on their pistols, they were always getting into trouble because they use it like a flashlight. And so they would like point it at guys to see what they were doing. So I think there was a couple of accidents. So everybody's hair caught on fire and everybody lost their mind. And so if you have two flashlights, then that lets you keep somebody at gunpoint, for instance, and then look somewhere else, you know, using that second flashlight. Plus, it gives you a backup if you need to. And there are ways to use a flashlight with a long gun without having a mount. You know, there are ways of holding them so in a pinch you could still see what you're doing.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Okay, calibers. Yes. Bigger, better. You put a 45-70 in somebody, they're not going to contest it. You hope.
You know, that's actually pretty cool. Skinner Sights did, he had one of the Italian import companies do 2 limited edition lever guns for him. One was a 44 Magnum Takedown 92, and one is a Takedown 1886 in 45-70. And I, of course, lost my mind and had to buy both of them. But I have to tell you, he did just what Tom said. He's put excellent quality sights on both of these guns. And, you know, when you have that little short 45-70 in your hand, it's really gives you some self-confidence, you know, because there really is not a problem you can't solve with that, period.
I always liked 44 Magnum in a lever gun because it completely pretty much removes the whole recoil issue of a 44 Magnum handgun. You know, it makes it relatively easy to control and gives you a good bit of oomph for rational distances too.
I think it does. It still kicks a little harder than people think. You know, I think a lot of that might be because of the drop on the buttstock. You know, if it was straighter, it probably wouldn't be that much of a problem. But
you got double the weight of the gun, you know, more than double the weight. So that helps a good bit.
I think a real sleeper though is a 357 Magnum. Mm-hmm. You know, I've got a Marlin. I don't know. Is that a 336 too? A 336? I can't remember. It's a slightly smaller frame, but it's in 357 Magnum. And boy, I mean, that is a really nice rifle. And dare I say this at the risk of us all getting into trouble, it's a dandy ladies rifle or a smaller statured man because it really doesn't recoil. And yet you're looking at a 158 to a 180 grain bullet at 17 or 1800 feet per second. Good Lord.
Yeah. Moving quite a bit faster than out of a handgun. So.
Yeah. I mean, and let's add a caveat though, is that sometimes they don't run 38 specials very well. Yeah. It's because the round's too short. And I know it's really weird because you'll lever it and it just spits them right out the top or the side, whatever you're doing. It's like you lever it and it goes cling, loaded round goes out.
So let's take this a different direction. Are there any guns, repeating type of guns you guys would stay away from? Aside from a junker, it doesn't matter if it's an M4 carbine fully tricked out. If it's a crappy one that doesn't work, you don't want it. But is there, in general, specific types you would say, that would be my last of last choices?
I had an MK19 automatic grenade launcher set up in my hallway for a while. And,
of course you
the
did.
effectiveness was phenomenal, but the collateral damage to the furniture finally made that one go. My wife just wouldn't tolerate it anymore.
I don't know. As much as I love Quigley Down Under, I don't know that I would have a single shot rifle as my defensive gun unless I had to, and so that would be one. I once had I can't remember the model name. It's a Remington pump action rifle.
Right.
It's like an 870, but it's a pump action rifle. And, I thought, wow, hey, this is really great. And it had an extended box magazine on it. And after I ran it for a little while, I just realized, well, I'm not really sure what I'm gaining here. And it's pretty complicated. And if you get a jam in there, it's difficult to clear. I'm not, really partial probably to that one. If you have it, learn to use it, but if you don't have it, don't run out to buy one, thinking it's going to solve your defensive rifle problems. But that's just my opinion. I don't know anything.
Don't forget wooden rifles. I mean, if we're talking in a broader sense, things that aren't scary looking black rifles, hard to argue against something like a Ruger Mini 14 or something in the Springfield M1A family. Nice wood stocks don't seem to frighten too many people, and yet those are both very fine options for.
Well, that M1 Garand, that's an old those aren't very effective. Okay,
never proved itself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I used to shoot at the sheriff's range in San Diego County, and there was an old guy who was a World War II vet. And I brought a Garand out one day, and I knew he was a vet, and I said, "Hey, would you like?" And he saw combat, and I said, "Would you like to shoot my rifle?" And he said, "Oh yeah, sure." He came up, he was looking at it and looking at it and looking at it, and I said, "What are you thinking about?" And he looked up at me, and he didn't really smile, but he said, "Man, I'll tell you, they used to drop like a bucket of bolts when you shot them with one of these."
Wow.
And I thought, well, there you go. Spoken from the man who was there who did that,
Very cool.
That is, pretty astounding.
I was laughing when you were talking about self-issued patrol rifles, because I did the same thing. My first patrol rifle before the term had even been coined was I bought an M1 carbine off a buddy, and I put it in I can't remember the name, a folding polymer stock. And I was the first guy that I know of in my area that had a quote-unquote patrol rifle. Well, being a young cop with mouths to feed, I ended up selling it. And I know the guy, he still got it. And the funny thing is, I paid nothing. In the early 80s, M1 carbines were dirt cheap.
Yeah, $150.
Yeah, tops. I can't afford that gun anymore. He told me what he would sell it for me. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. And I checked, online prices and stuff. It's like, why did I sell that gun? There's another topic for another day.
That's one of my favorite guns of all time is the M1 carbine. I love that. They are so much fun to shoot.
Yeah.
That brings up a thing, though. It's about ammunition, and that a lot of people for handguns, they argue about stopping power and which the best bullet and all that kind of stuff. One nice thing about most long guns is it actually doesn't matter at all. If you've got a long gun of some kind, 30-30, 32 Winchester Special, 308, 243, it really doesn't matter. Whatever ammo it will shoot will more than protect you adequately.
Yep.
Period. In today's insanity with the ammo, I think that's maybe a reassuring thought.
Hey, Spear makes a gold dot round for the M1 carbine. It's a heck of a round. I've gel tested that one some years ago, and it's super impressive for a home application.
Fine, you guys are just rubbing it in at this point, okay?
Yep.
I actually, I was involved in their development of that cartridge because at the time it was the early days of trying to get police rifles into police cars. And I was promoting the Marlin Camp carbine and all that kind of stuff. But like you say, the 30 carbines were around, but the problem was there really was no effective ammunition. And so a good friend of mine named Don Hacklander was actually the guy who drove it with Federal. He was a distributor for Federal and dealt with law enforcement. And so he was able to convince them that if you make a good quality bullet, that suddenly opens up these rifles, to being issued by police. And it did. There was a lot of agencies who then went out and bought carbines. What the problem was, though? In those days, there really wasn't a lot of aftermarket support for the guns. And so it was hard to get good quality parts, and it was hard to get guns that ran right. And, so it was a good concept, but, nowadays it probably would work fine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, I would say the first actual patrol rifle in widespread use, and I'd be interested to hear your opinion on this, Roy, was probably the Mini 14, especially out west. And that was probably the first one that you really saw a lot of guys carrying.
Yeah,
it just cost me money. I don't have one of those, and I need one of those.
A Mini 14 or a 30 carbine? Oh, yeah.
I don't know how I don't have one of those.
They're really cool. When I was a Chula Vista Police Reserve, so this would have been 1974, 75, the National City Police Department, which was just a little town next to us, they had 30 carbines, and they mounted them on the screen behind them, horizontally. And we were always just so damn envious because they'd cover us on a bank alarm or something. They'd jump out of their car and grab that 30 carbine. It's like, damn, we have that. But you're right. I did see, especially it was a sheriff department, I believe it was, and you started to see some Mini 14s show up.
Yep.
Especially the stainless steel ones. In the early days, our SWAT team had Mini 14 GBs. Is that what they were called? They were the folding stock, full auto. Yeah, a little short barrel, flash suppressor on the end.
Wow.
They were sure fun to shoot.
Wow, what a trip down memory lane. But again, if you look at the common press, the popular press, every gun we've talked about, well, they're obsolete. Well, Mr. Popular Press blog writer, how about you stand down at 150 and let me crank off 2 or 3 and you tell me how that works for you,
You're right. And Brent, you said something earlier, which actually I think is important. Whether or not people like the fact that it's important, which most don't, it is still important. I used to go camping on BLM land in California in the desert. And I had a just old beat up AR-15 and throw that over my shoulder because there was a lot of illegal aliens and drug runners and stuff. And the BLM police came by one time and they said, "Oh, hello, sir. Could you please take that gun off and put it down on the ground and step away from it?" And I said, "Sure," and I did. And we visited and everything was fine. Well, 2 or 3 times later, I had my little short 30-30 over my shoulder. And the guys drove right up to me and got out and said, "Hey, how you doing? Hey, what you got there?" And I said, "Oh, it's an old Model 94. Hey, can I see it?" "Sure." We had a big visit. I think he shot it,
That's
and it was
funny.
like invisible, It's like, oh, that's just that old
Did
rifle.
he not know it's more dangerous, sir?
It's more dangerous, sir.
More foot-pounds? Man.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what we ought to do, come up with a dangerouser scale.
I think you're right.
That
sounds like a copyrighted thing to me.
Exactly.
This is more dangerly than that one is. More
Dangerly.
That might be even better. We'll go with
Roy
Dangerly.
Huntington Dangerly scale.
Dangerly.
Wow.
We need to start putting that in our videos. I'll have Sherry do that. Make up something that says dangerly whenever one of us is doing something borderline,
And instead of using a number scale, something really ambiguous like, oh goodness, and wow, and
crap.
ouch.
Purple. Dangerly scale, right?
I like that idea. At least something came good out of this podcast.
I'm actually writing it down. The Dangerly scale.
Dangerly scale.
Oh, that's
heck.
fantastic.
As evaluated by MSNBC. Yeah.
Here, hold my beer. I don't know where that would go at the beginning or the end of the Dangerly scale. I'm not quite sure.
Where does "I have entrails in my hair" go?
That paints a vivid mental picture. Someday you have to tell us that story, only not on the air, I think, So, hey, let me give a tip and a trick, though.
Okay.
We started that new video series called Quick Tips. And one quick tip that I'll put out here for free is, granted that everyone's lost their mind right now with buying guns, but once things calm down and get back to normal, if they ever do, is if you want one of these old lever guns, especially Model 94s, is, shop the pawn shops and shop the gun stores that have been around for a while. and just get the rustiest, ugliest Model 94 because they're hard to sell. And most of them are not shot very often. So the bores are usually fine. You know, they usually are mechanically fine. They just look bad because they've bounced around on some farmer's truck for 30 or 40 years. But buy it, you know, and if it costs you $250 or $350, it doesn't really matter. Take it home, clean it, oil it, find a box of 30-30, and you're halfway there.
This episode has got me all inspired to go shoot my lever actions.
Yeah.
Well, right. We'll show you how to do it.
I'm coming down with a flu tomorrow, so if I'm not in the office, it's just because I'm sick.
It's the lever action flu.
It is.
It's Winchester COVID.
Yeah.
You know?
And you can start working on our Dangerly scale for the 357 and the 30-30 and the 45-7. It would be closer to that I have fluid in my hair kind of thing.
Well, hey, if you're listening, though, let's do us a favor and let us know, contact us, Guns Magazine editor, you know, that kind of stuff, American Handgunner editor, and let us know if you'd like to see more video stuff about lever guns.
Yep.
And I mean, if
we only knew somebody who could produce those.
Well, exactly.
You know what? I'll call a friend of mine.
Brent, you got any ideas?
Action gun, you know.
If only we had somebody who kind of lived out on a farm somewhere and liked to tinker and do silly things with guns.
Dangerly
things.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, we just did a podcast episode a month or two ago about DIY gunsmithing, cold bluing, et cetera, et cetera. That's where I thought you were going. Go find these guns that are oldies but goodies. And like you said, a lot of them look like heck, but they haven't been shot that much. You know, a box a year would probably be a lot. And you get them cleaned up, you get them operable, clean them up as much as you want, or, you know, really restore them. But you've got the capability and you've got the resources in Roy and all of us, American Handgunner and Guns Magazine. And hopefully there's some stuff out there we can show you the way. And if not, like Roy said, drop us an email. We'll do our best to give our opinion.
Add a few bucks to the rifle investment and pick up the first 2 editions of DIY Gunsmithing.
There you
they're
go.
On both gunsmagazine.com. You can get there, AmericanHandgunner.com or Amazon.com. And DIY Gunsmithing, 2 different issues. And they got all kinds of tips in there for freshening up stocks, fixing scratches and scrapes, rebluing, you name it. So making them work again.
I think I did an article on shortening a Model 94 in one of them. I don't remember which edition. And so it's almost doable, you know, by a regular human being, I think. So, yeah.
Well, gentlemen, again, thank you very much, Roy Huntington and Tom McHale. We're going to have to get together and maybe do this in another month or so.
There you go.
I think it'd be fun.
All right.
I only do it for the money. So
exactly. So, okay. Talk to you guys later.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
That was fun catching up with the guys, and I'd say there's a good chance they'll put in another audio appearance in 4 weeks. And with that, we hope you're enjoying the Guns Magazine podcast. Please tell all your friends, even the ununifying liberals. Guns Magazine was first in the business, and we're using our decades of friendships to bring you the most interesting chats in the gun world. If you've got questions or comments about the show, please email me. That's editor@gunsmagazine.com. Make sure you don't miss out on anything by subscribing to us on your favorite podcast catcher, YouTube, and of course at gunsmagazine.com. While you're online, don't forget to check out our great sister publication, American Handgunner Magazine, at americanhandgunner.com, and we'd also appreciate it if you'd share a favorite episode or some kind words on your own social media channels. And finally, I'd like to remind you to check out our sponsor, the guys and gals who really know accuracy at Berger Bullets. Learn more at bergerbullets.com. That's it for this episode of the Guns Magazine podcast for the entire staff at FMG Publications. I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Wheat. Now get out there and get shooting.